My father's last will left all his assets to my sister, including the car I purchased for him, so I revealed his hidden financial dealings to our entire family. My name is Elliot, and I'm 34 years old. I want to share what's been happening with my family recently. It's been a mix of old hurts resurfacing and new frustrations boiling over. The kind of situation where you convince yourself you've moved on, only to realize the pain still lingers. My family's favoritism was blatant. If you asked my father, Walter, he'd likely deny it. But everyone else saw it clearly. My younger sister, Clara, has always been the favored child. She's 28, bright, driven, and has somehow ticked every box my father ever set. I, on the other hand, could never quite meet his standards, no matter how hard I tried. For years, I brushed it off, thinking Dad's expectations were too high or that my achievements weren't showcased enough. But last week, everything became undeniable. It was a typical Thursday evening. Mom cooked dinner, and Dad, Clara, and I sat around the table. We weren't close, not truly. We were never the kind of family that shared every detail of our lives. It was more of a ritual, a weekly gathering where we were physically present but emotionally distant. The conversation that night was strained, as usual. Dad was quieter, more reserved than normal. I thought he was just tired. Then, as I was telling Clara about a work project I'd been excited about for weeks, Dad cut me off with a cold, biting tone. "You'll never measure up, Elliot. You just don't get it." It wasn't a jest or a casual remark. It felt like a final judgment delivered in front of Mom and Clara. No one spoke. My face burned, my hands clenched. The words lingered, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to respond, but I couldn't. Part of me wanted to yell, part of me wanted to flee. Clara gave me a faint, knowing smile as if she was used to Dad's routine and almost relished it. Mom quickly changed the topic and we finished dinner in silence. The next morning, my phone was flooded with notifications. Dad had posted a long message on Facebook celebrating Clara's major promotion. She'd been named senior director at her company, a role she'd worked hard to earn. But the way Dad wrote it felt like the world was meant to bow to her while I was erased. There was a picture of Clara holding a champagne flute, beaming widely. Dad's post overflowed with praise, calling her brilliant, dedicated, and a testament to what effort can achieve. It was partly true, but it felt like a public declaration of her superiority. What stung most was the absence of any mention of me. No recognition, no acknowledgement of my existence, just a spotlight on Clara. I scrolled through the comments. Friends and relatives congratulating her, asking about the celebration, and realized that, to our family and friends, I was the invisible son. That evening, my phone rang. "Elliot," Dad said in his commanding tone, "we're hosting a party for Clara's promotion at that venue downtown, the one with the chandeliers. I expect you to chip in. $1,500 should cover it." I was stunned. "You want me to pay for her party?" I asked, my voice tight. "Yes. She deserves the best, and this is a family event. You're part of this family, so you contribute." I took a deep breath. "Dad, I'm not funding your favoritism." There was a long pause. Then his voice grew colder, sharper. "You owe her, Elliot. Don't forget that." I hung up before he could say more. That night, I replayed every word of our conversation. The way he always made me feel like I was lagging behind, the way he dismissed my successes. He showered Clara with attention and resources, as if she were his only child. I'm not blind. I know Clara earned her promotion, but this wasn't about fairness or merit. It was about control and favoritism, and my father's refusal to see me as anything but a failure. That night, something in me changed. I decided I wouldn't let this pattern continue. I'd stand up for myself, even if it meant breaking unspoken family rules. But then I did something I swore I'd never do. Something that could either change everything or tear the family apart. After hanging up with Dad, I sat alone in my apartment, long after the lights were off. The quiet was louder than any argument. I kept replaying his words, "You'll never measure up." Then the demand to fund Clara's party as if she were untouchable royalty. I was furious, but more than that, I was exhausted. It wasn't just about the money or the party. It was years of feeling unseen, dismissed, and rejected by my own family. The kind of rejection that hurts worse than any harsh word because it's slow, steady, and relentless. Dad was always a tough man. He worked hard. That's what everyone says. But his affection always came with strings attached. When I was younger, I tried so hard to win his approval. Good grades, sports, music lessons, even a college scholarship. But nothing was ever enough. Clara sailed through childhood. Dad loved parading her achievements. To him, she was the perfect daughter, practically flawless. I don't resent Clara. She was just a kid living her life. But Dad made it clear early on that she was his pride, and I was just the other son. Every milestone I reached was ignored or downplayed. When I landed a solid job after college, Dad barely acknowledged it. But when Clara got a summer internship, he announced it to every relative and friend like it was a global event. Mom was different. She loved us both, but she rarely stood up to Dad when he acted this way. Sometimes I think she didn't know how to challenge him. Maybe she thought that's just how things were. During that dinner when Dad said I'd never measure up, Mom's eyes flickered with sadness. But she stayed silent. Later, I learned she felt trapped, unable to intervene without making things worse. This left me caught between two parents who should have been my biggest allies, but weren't. 2 days after the call, I received a formal invitation to Clara's promotion party in the mail. It was ornate, gold-embossed lettering on thick cardstock for a lavish event at an upscale venue with live music, gourmet food, and an open bar. I stared at it, my stomach churning. I knew Dad was using this party to showcase Clara's success to everyone. Friends, colleagues, neighbors who'd known us since childhood. It was a public display, a trophy case, and I was expected to help pay for it. I wasn't just angry anymore. I felt used. The next day, I called Dad back. "Dad," I said calmly, "I'm not sending money for the party." There was a long silence. Then his voice turned icy, cutting. "That's disappointing, Elliot. I thought you'd do what's right for your sister." "I'm doing what's right," I said. "I'm not paying for a party where I'm not even recognized. Maybe you're not the son I thought you were." I could hear the underlying threat, the implication that if I didn't comply, I'd be completely cut off. I told him, "I'm done playing your games." I debated telling Clara about it. We were never close, but I hoped she'd understand. After all, she's had her own struggles. But when I brought it up, she didn't just brush it off. She accused me of being selfish. "Dad's working so hard to make this party perfect. You should be proud of me, Elliot," she said with a forced smile. "I am proud of you," I replied. "But I'm not okay with how Dad treats me, or being asked to pay for it when I'm treated like I don't exist." Clara's eyes narrowed. "You just don't understand. You never have." It was clear she wasn't on my side. Not in this. Later that evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Elliot, this is Bryce, your dad's accountant. We're collecting contributions for the party by Friday. Please confirm if you'll send your share." I stared at the screen, incredulous. Even Dad's accountant was part of this. It felt like a business deal, not a family event. I texted back, "Not contributing. Please inform your client." That night, I made a decision that shocked even me. I started digging through old family financial papers I'd found while clearing out Mom's attic last year. I hadn't paid much attention to them before, but now I was searching for anything that could give me leverage or clarity. What I found floored me. There were records of money flowing from Dad's accounts, large sums to companies and investments I'd never heard of. Then there were personal expenses, luxury trips, a new car for Clara, expensive gifts with no receipts or explanations. But there was something else buried in the files, something I didn't expect. A letter from a lawyer outlining a revised will that left nearly everything to Clara, with barely a mention of me. That's when everything shifted. After finding the will, I spent the next 2 days in a fog. It felt like I'd uncovered a secret world beneath my family's surface, one built on exclusion and control, not love or fairness. I couldn't sleep or focus at work. Every time I thought about confronting Dad or even Clara, my chest tightened with dread. It felt like a trap, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to step into it or run. One afternoon, I met Mom for coffee. I needed someone to talk to. someone who could offer answers, or at least empathy. She looked more worn than usual, as if the family's weight was crushing her too. When I mentioned the will, her face paled. She sighed heavily and said, "Elliot, your father's been planning this for years. He's always believed Clara was the one to carry the family legacy forward." I shook my head. "So what about me? Am I just supposed to vanish?" Mom hesitated, then quietly admitted, "He's never seen it that way. You were always harder for him to understand? You didn't fit the mold he expected?" It hurt more than I expected. Meanwhile, Dad's messages grew more frequent and less subtle. He started texting me, reminding me of family obligations and the importance of supporting Clara publicly and privately. When I ignored them, he called multiple times a day, sometimes leaving voicemails dripping with veiled disappointment. He even sent a group email, copying extended family and close friends, questioning why I hadn't contributed to the party fund. I felt exposed and humiliated. The pressure wasn't just about money anymore, it was about upholding appearances. Dad wanted to project a perfect family image, on social media, at events, in every conversation, and I was the inconvenient truth he wanted to hide. I reached out to Clara again, hoping the will's revelation might change things. Instead, she sent a biting reply. "Dad's right about you, Elliot. You don't understand how hard this has been for him. For me. Maybe if you weren't so self-absorbed, you'd see that." It was as if she'd become the defender of the very thing hurting me most. It felt like betrayal, but I also realized she was trapped in her own way, clinging to the favor Dad had given her, no matter the cost. The party was less than a week away, and the family tension was unbearable. Dad grew more distant, cold in his texts, and Clara was consumed with party plans that excluded me entirely. I got a call from the event planner, copied by Dad, asking if I wanted to RSVP or send a gift. I declined. The planner seemed surprised but polite. Dad was clearly using every tool to pressure me into compliance, and I was holding my ground, but just barely. One night, lying awake, I thought about who I wanted to be in this. The son who desperately wanted to belong and be loved, or the man who refused to be sidelined, ignored, and controlled any longer. I made a choice. I was going to confront this head-on, not just for me, but to expose the toxic, unfair dynamic. Doing so would risk everything: family gatherings, relationships, even my peace of mind. The days before the party dragged on. Every phone notification made me jump. I knew Dad was watching, waiting for me to cave, send the money, and fall back into my role as the obedient son who funded Clara's spotlight. But I didn't. Instead, I started planning quietly. I began by gathering more evidence, not just the will, but all of Dad's financial records, hidden transfers, receipts for extravagant gifts, even payments to a company registered in Clara's name but controlled by Dad. It was a web of money moving behind the scenes, showing how Dad funneled his wealth and attention solely to her. I scanned the documents, made copies, and stored them securely. This was my leverage, my insurance. I also discreetly contacted a family lawyer. I wasn't sure I wanted to start a legal fight, but I needed guidance, someone impartial who could explain the documents and my rights. On the night of the party, I stayed home while the rest of the family and friends gathered at the grand venue downtown. I didn't send a gift. I didn't attend. I didn't send a dime. Instead, I did something else. I sent a carefully crafted email, not just to Dad, but to extended family, Clara's colleagues, and a few close family friends. In it, I outlined everything I'd uncovered about Clara, the financial trail, and most importantly, Dad's pattern of favoritism that had left me and others unseen and unsupported for years. I worded it cautiously. No accusations, just facts, questions about fairness, and a call for transparency. I hit send, heart pounding, knowing there was no going back. The responses came fast. Some relatives were stunned, others furious, mostly at me for airing private matters. Clara called, livid, accusing me of betrayal. Dad stayed silent at first, but the tension was palpable. In the days that followed, whispers and awkward conversations spread through the family. Invitations stopped. Messages went unanswered. Dad's perfect family image was fracturing. But for the first time, I felt a strange relief. The truth was out, messy and raw. After sending the email, my phone buzzed for hours. At first, I couldn't bring myself to read the responses. I just sat frozen on my couch, staring at the dim glow of my screen as if it might explode. It was strange. For years, I'd wanted to be heard. Now that I was, the silence in my apartment was deafening. I didn't feel victorious, but more like I'd lost something, as if I'd buried the last hope I had for my family. Eventually, I mustered the courage to check the messages. They fell into 3 groups. The first was quiet support. A few cousins and an aunt who reached out privately, saying they'd noticed the favoritism too, even if they'd never spoken up. My cousin Eleanor wrote, "I always wondered why your dad treated you like an outsider at gatherings while Clara got a red carpet. I'm sorry it took this long for someone to say it." The second group was silent, a heavy, telling silence. These were the ones who didn't want to pick sides, who preferred peaceful family dinners and clean social media posts. I didn't blame them, but I didn't respect their neutrality either. Then there was the third group, the defenders. They came in loud and fast. One of Dad's old friends emailed back, "I don't know what you're trying to do, but you should think twice before hurting your family," as if the family hadn't been fracturing for years. 2 days after the party, Clara posted a long message on her social media. It began, "When people are envious, they'll do anything to tear others down. I've worked hard for my success, and I won't let bitterness ruin my moment." She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The message was clear. I was being painted as the jealous, spiteful sibling trying to ruin her day. Her friends flooded the comments with, "So proud of you, ignore the haters, and you're a superstar." Some family members even chimed in with support. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. A few nights later, Mom called. I could hear the weariness in her voice before she spoke. "Elliot," she said softly, "I read your email." She paused so long I thought the call had dropped. "I should have done something sooner," she finally said. "Your father's always had a strong personality. He knows how to make people feel small when they don't fit his vision." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be angry at her for not standing up for me sooner, for not challenging Dad. But I knew she lived in his shadow. "Did you see the will?" I asked quietly. "I did," she said. "It's real. He had it drafted last spring. He said it was to protect the family legacy. When I asked about you, he said, 'Elliot will be fine. He doesn't need anything. Like you were a stranger.'" She was crying. I never agreed with it, but I was too scared to push back. It was the first time I'd heard regret in her voice. "I'm so sorry." In the weeks that followed, the family didn't collapse, but it fractured. Small changes started to happen. My Uncle Graham, Dad's younger brother, called out of nowhere. We hadn't talked in years. He said, "Your father's pride has always been a problem, but I didn't realize it had gone this far." We spoke for an hour. He shared stories about their childhood, how Dad was always competitive, even with his own siblings. Graham said, "You're not the first person he's tried to push out of the circle." It was odd hearing that. For so long, I thought I was the only one, the outcast, the odd one out. But now I was learning that maybe Dad was the one building walls. Then one afternoon, I received a thick envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from Dad, not an apology, but a lecture. He wrote, "You've made your choice, Elliot. I hope it brings you peace, because it's brought shame to this family. I built what we have through hard work and sacrifice, and it's not yours to destroy." Then, at the bottom, in smaller, sharper writing, "Do not contact me again. I'll revise the will to reflect your decision." There it was, the threat, the line drawn. Yet I felt calm because something had shifted. The roles had reversed. I was no longer pleading to be noticed. I wasn't the quiet, compliant son chasing scraps of approval. I'd pulled back the curtain and Dad didn't like being exposed. I wasn't finished yet. If Dad was going to double down, so was I. I gathered everything I had, the financial records, emails, will drafts, and met with the lawyer again. We reviewed everything carefully, building a timeline of decisions and patterns, not for a lawsuit, but for clarity. The lawyer said something that stuck with me. Even if you never take this to court, documenting the truth is a kind of power most people in your position never claim. And I realized he was right. I wasn't doing this to win a legal battle. I was doing it to say, without doubt or apology, that what happened was real and wrong. A week after Dad's letter, I got a short text from Clara. "Can we talk?" I stared at it, unsure what to do. My instinct was to ignore her, after years of favoritism, her public post, and her coldness. But part of me was curious. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd finally admit the truth. Maybe I wanted closure. We met at a park near our old high school, quiet and shaded by tall maples, a place where time seemed to pause. Clara looked different, worn, thinner than I remembered. She didn't waste time. "I read everything," she said. "The will, the documents, your email." I didn't believe it at first, but it's all true, isn't it? I nodded. "It is." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting like she did when we were kids and she was anxious. "I don't know how I didn't see it," she whispered. "Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to. I thought I had to protect what I'd earned. But now I see. Dad wasn't protecting me. He was using me." It was the first time she'd acknowledged the imbalance. I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "He's angry with me now," she went on. "After the party, people started asking questions. He blamed me for not stopping you, said I let it spiral, and then he cut off the business funding he promised me. I hadn't expected Dad to turn on her, but it made sense. His affection was never love, it was control. "I'm sorry, Elliot," she said, looking up at me. "I was awful to you. I let him turn us against each other. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say it. For the first time in years, I saw the sister I remembered, not the polished figure Dad had shaped, but the girl I used to build forts with in the backyard." "I believe you," I said, "but that doesn't mean I'm ready to act like everything's okay." "I know," she said, "but maybe someday." After that talk, things began to change, slowly but noticeably. Word spread through the family. It was like I'd been let back in, not because I demanded it, but because I'd forced everyone to face the truth. Some relatives who'd initially brushed me off started reaching out. I got a letter from Aunt Diana apologizing for not believing me. I was even invited to a cousin's graduation. Dad, meanwhile, grew quieter. In public, he insisted I'd misunderstood the will, that the situation was overblown. But in private, his influence weakened, and the control he once held over the family began to erode. Not dramatically, but steadily. He stopped being the man everyone turned to for approval, and that, I think, was the real start of the end of his dominance. I haven't spoken to Dad since his letter. We're not exactly estranged, just distant. I send him a card on holidays, and he sometimes replies with a brief formal note. We exist apart, and I'm okay with that for now. Clara and I are slowly rebuilding. We don't talk often, but she left the business Dad had set up for her and started her own. She says it feels good to build something on her own terms. As for me, I'm okay. I didn't win big, and I wasn't handed anything, but I found something more valuable. Clarity. I saw the truth, named it, stood by it, even when no one wanted to hear it. And over time, that truth paved the way for something new. Peace, real peace. Not reconciliation with everyone, not a perfect ending,